Welcome to the VCP SoCal monthly reading. This month we have three phenomenal poets from all over the world. We've got Cecilia Woloch coming to us from Woloch, Poland. Hope I said that correctly. We have Carine Topal, who's coming to us from La Quinta, California. And we have Kelley coming to us from Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm going to start off the reading. Carine will start us. Carine, I am so happy to present these three poets because they're, not only do I love their work, I probably wouldn't be writing poetry without Cecilia, but I love them. They're dear friends. They're extraordinary human beings. And I'm just really excited to have them. They all know each other very well, and their work, though very, very different from one another, really complements each other. So starting with Carine, the thing about Carine's work that always has really struck me is how meticulous it is. And yet accessible. So, and I had spoken with Carine earlier, and I don't like to, you know, all of the biographical information is there, and but I don't want to quote all of their accomplishments because we'd be here all afternoon. But I do want to say that Carine, and you can hear it in her work, she plays the piano. She's a beautiful pianist, and that really gels with her work. You can, if you didn't know she was an accomplished musician, you would feel it in your body as you read her work. And without further ado, I'm going to give you Carine Topal.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I didn't know how that worked. Okay. Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here, reading with the wonderful Collin, Kelley, whom I know we visited in Atlanta, which is a great city. I have several of his books, which I read frequently, and with the wonderful Cecilia Woloch, with whom I was in Poland before she was walking, and now she's walking. But I want to thank you all for being here. It's a Sunday afternoon and you could be elsewhere. I wanted to thank Jerry Garcia and Elizabeth Iannacci for a very successful long-term poetry event, the Valley Contemporary Poets. It's just wonderful. It's a wonderful event and I appreciate it. So thanks for having me. I do sound rather nasal. My voice is usually deep, but I had an excavation of my sinus cavity the other day, in which they found a sonnet that I wrote 20 years ago. But anyway, so I'm sounding very nasal, but I'll get through this fine, and I'm just happy to be able to read here. So I'm going to read very few new poems, but I feel that I've left, when I do my readings, I leave out a lot of the older poems from my older books. So I'm going to be reading from Bed of Want, my second book, and there are a series of poems here that are postcards that I've received throughout the years around the globe, mostly from Cecilia and from my parents. And I just imagined who these characters are on the front of the postcard, and I gave them a reason to be. So here is a series of postcards. And this one is from Trieste, and it's from a photo by Cartier-Bresson, and the photograph is from 1933, yet the postcard was written by Mathilde on March 28th, 1937. Dear Violette, the isolated doors simply open. Dirty, long men in grass-stained trousers have a peek at the turbaned beauty lounging on the grass. Then I see it's really a neat pile of sand, as though she knows what to do about the doors jutting black and white, bleak towers in the background. The town takes on a nebulous geography this time of year. Its shifting landscape, first a knoll, then a beach, a medieval village tower, and now this woman with bound glamour, whom I'll never figure out. Only those long men attracted to the closed face of a countess. Yes, she's committed to staying here, long after the country has been broken. I'll write again soon. Regards to Thurston. Hopefully he's over the rash he contracted in Bermuda. Mathilde. This postcard is from May 15th, 1945. Dear, I dream you still young, strong as a nun's last vow. How proud I was. Wisdom gave me the patience of kings, but hurry to me. The garden is full of butterflies and hyacinth. The halls still ache with your absence. Take the train to Marlborough East Station. I'm the gentleman holding the daffodils. Ever, darling. This is Mathilde again, writing to a cousin that never responds. This is from March 15th, 1952. Dear Constance, so sorry we were unable to join you in Portugal. The citizens are quite charming. Local wine is dry and abundant. Lucille and I bought old pearls in the market and lovely woven scarves. The hat I'm wearing right now in this photo is as good as it gets in Lisbon. Hope your leg is healing quickly. Sorry, I left the champagne glasses at the foot of the stairs. How is Henry's back after his nasty fall? Regards to Biscuit, Mathilde. Here's another postcard from March 22nd, 1952. Dear Constance, I've promised Lucille to cut down on the Vino Verde. I do hope the wretched London rain stops so I can dry out in a bit of sunshine, don't you? The mountains are spotted with quaint peasants, quite attractive in colorful kerchiefs. They take such pride in the little they have. They almost seem happy with their lot. Imagine us in the heat of the day, our skirts hiked up in a dreadful bunch. It seems the Portuguese admire the more than occasional drink. Perhaps we'll move to the Algarve. Regards from Lucille, who insists on wearing that silly hat from Lisbon. This is the last postcard from Tunis, July 12, 1957. I practice closing my eyes as he mumbles, east or west, darling. Then when the small beams of light shine on my face, he turns me to the left and I follow with my fingertips the warm brickwork along the walls, pausing before the old sink. There, I hear his mouth open and he does that fretwork on my face. A cat's cradle on skin, a man teaching a woman who loves the heat and wind, how to touch the noon light, how to welcome it without sight. My face in his hands, falsely blind. Your loving cousin, Mathilde. And the last poem from Bed of Want is called Pleasure Hotel, which someone asked me to read, so I will. Smoke rose from the Pleasure Hotel. Smoke rose in the face of the Pleasure Hotel, in the moonless face of a rose. Smoke rose like pleasure burning. In the burning hotel, pleasure rose like smoke. Though moonless we pleasured, we rose, we burning, the hotel moonless, though we rose. Yet more than burning, we rose burning full of pleasure in the moonless hotel. We pleasured, moonless, we burning faced, moonless, we face to face in the moonless pleasure hotel of smoke. Yes, we rose and rose in the face of this burning, and like any pleasure, any face in the hotel, in the moonless night, we rose. The next several poems are from In the Heaven of Never Before. I always thought about my mother when I talked with Cecilia about Lucille Ball. And the day she died, somehow it really upset me. Although my mother was not a comic, she was a fiery redhead. And she had that ballsy kind of behavior, not afraid of anything. So this is when Lucy died. That morning, when Lucille Ball died, a proclamation of redheads lit the room. Lucy in the chocolate factory, Lucy prancing through hoops in some horsey number, Lucy stomping grapes in a vat, dressed like a gypsy. And a rush went through me. How I love my mother and her ruby hair. Suddenly tall again, her sleek legs in seamed nylons, my mother at 30, gorgeous as Lucy or the third floor mannequin at Macy's. Some say we have the same hands, hands small enough to sew or to play the cello, hands that shape and fasten, hands that hem and baste and pin, first tacking the ginghams and wools with the colored tipped pins, feeling them through the cloth, always keeping a few in her mouth, just in case. I turn like a music box figure, my body disappearing under calico or chintz. She is dressing me. This is how she loved me. Plaid skirts, quilted tops, a satin A-line with matching handbag, floral cotton slips and organdy formals, teaching me how fabric gathered and folded best when cut on the bias. My mother, a rouge shadow cast along her forehead as she sat beneath me, her head bowed like summer fuchsia as she chalked and pinned, her hair hectic and fiery. Under me, rubies, rubies, rubies. This next poem is for Cecilia. When I came to visit Atlanta, we went to an extraordinary, I thought it's a botanical garden, but it was more like a orchid museum. And the two of us were just in absolute awe at what we were looking at. And this old man came by and was explaining to us all the Latin terms for these very sexual plants, actually. So this is called Plant Sanctuary, and it's for Cecilia. We didn't know what to call them. Some were clusters of cups with mahogany eyes, others sexual petticoats edged in a mix of reds. We whispered, wild slippers, lipstick. The glass enclosed gardens hissed in the steamy heat. We locked arms, then gently bent down to touch the Chinese orchids, their lavender slips spotted with dew. So haughty, we expected a whiskey-edged voice to emerge from the sulfo trumpet. Other orchids, spiked tigers crawling up hardy stems, seemed predatory, designed to last through changes in weather. And why do we suddenly feel hungry and jealous? What about the orange lip set on sepals of dark chocolate, perfectly scored and edged in innuendo? From where we knelt, both of us could mimic the sturdy stems holding up pods, girls showing off their breasts to the woodland ferns. Fog pawed its way through our hair and vapor shot around us gracefully. Polka-dotted female parts in purples and yellows, small enough for our shirt pockets, headed up to the Georgia light. A white-haired man walked about naming the blooms in Latin. Cochleoda, Sophronitis. We chanted clitoris, vulva, areola, pausing to touch the scarlet, the golden-throated, the pendulous ones. This is for my father. It's called Turquoise. My father sidesteps into the shallow end of the pool, navigating the wet stairs as old people do, then plunges in where it's safe, moments later emerging in the deep end. From beneath the water's skin, small ripples distort my father's body, his legs and arms separate from his torso, then smooth out as though glazed in sudden youth. His age washes off him, his skin a map of newness and possibility. He is young again, buoyant as an island. I am holding his hand. We have suffered for his bitterness, for his hunched back, his deafness, his 2 sons under the ground in Amityville. He never forgave his mother for being so plain. Years later, alone in a hallway in Pompano Beach, 3 nurses from Martinique praying sweet Jesus, over and over his fallen body, pull his stocky frame back into his room until help arrives. Even now, I find myself holding him in my palm as he floats there in a pool of blue when he was at his happiest, safe in the joy he could not sense when he had it. This is for my mother. I'm from New York, and when they lived in the city, they decided to move to where it was easier to live. So they moved to the North Shore of Long Island, and there was a magnolia tree that actually bloomed in the snow, and it amazed me. So this was one of the visits I made to New York, and it's called Magnolia. Though it is April, a dusting of snow suns itself in the front yard, where only a few days ago our magnolia tried to bloom, white shroud of winter into spring. And our father, short of breath, on his way up the stairs to check his bride, whose breath will grow shallow, whose eyes, which are closed, will close for good, and it will take the winter for that. So these are the newer poems that I've written in a new manuscript, unnamed. And this is for Frank O'Hara. I read the graveside inscription that Allen Ginsberg wrote for Frank O'Hara. I was so touched by it. And I actually saw Allen Ginsberg when I was living in the city, going to school there, walking down the street on Bleecker Street. So I always felt a kind of a commonality with him, although he knows that I dare exist. So this is called, Though It Is Summer, We Cover You in Overcoats. And this is the epigraph that was written on his stone. Grace to be born, born live and variously as possible. To love something beautiful should be enough, should be. As exquisite are your vague blue eyes caught in the delicate light of Cherry Grove, heat pounding itself down to the shallows. Frank, it is July of your 40th year. You were born in a decade of secret clubs hushed by laws. But who doesn't adore you as you arrive on Fire Island? All that shot glass love in the same sun as that beautiful man smoking Luckies on a chaise. In a landscape of no trees, where the wind blows the grass back hard, the seafront calls and you ramble from our cottage toward the dunes, sand traffic ahead and in a hurry. It was only hours ago that you'd tonic your drink with good friends. When we heard that you'd been struck by a Jeep, we all ran toward the horde of mostly summer tourists gathered where you lay, still and pale, your eyes cloudy, sharded glass in the sun and blood in the sand. We knew nothing about shock, the internal blood that mixes with bile, the bleeding, but we knew to keep you warm. You mislaid in the glint of a large orange sun, the last of you, last of the bagatelles of the museum now emptying its oils and exhibits, last of your close calls. Though it is summer, we cover you in overcoats. We depart bewildered, head to the hospital, and you, unbodied, still fetching in a blue crew neck, a silver bracelet with a broken catch at your wrist. Next piece is called Inventories. I think there are two more. At the table, a chipped cup half filled with cherry jam. Between the leaves, a clawed out fruit fallen from a tree. A tin box of mints, a girl named Sadie. Under her crinoline, love's blindness. In the suburbs of my youth, the purple-marrowed brothers born before me. Within the closed-mouth matryoshka, a lung full of heartwood. During the vague amusement of my second marriage, a boutonniere of nightshade, which gave the groom the heaves, my ambiguous grief. Chiseled in stone, my father, hunched in the same sun as his buried boys. In the shadows, my mother mourning and half crazed. On the tip of Chagall's tongue, goats in the trees, umbrellas looking calmly away. On my tongue and the tongues of others, milk still warm from the milking. Hidden in the hull of a ship, unnamed children leaning toward shore. This is my last poem for my son. A very large thing. The biggest is a heart break, a heart packed with impulse, clamoring aorta's great throb, while breath sputters with false hope and hunger. So large the want, so ample the claim, no cure with powder or pills. Things break. Weather rises. It's Tuesday. I've tried everything. I've trafficked in motherhood, burned sage and prayed, played a dirge. I know the bottom down to the lime, never touch of cheek, all jowl and clutch and the pleading song of absence. It's getting late. The world is filled with blood and treasures. This strange red heart, its faint light. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Well, that was extraordinary. Thank you so much, Carine. I have just marked so many lines that were just, as I said, meticulous and beautiful and evocative. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Really, really lovely.
Thanks for having me.
And it was a pleasure. So coming up, we have Collin Kelley. Any of you who are not familiar with Collin's work, you're in for a treat. Collin is very active in the Atlanta community and an incredible supporter of poetry and poets. And I was in Atlanta when I met him many, many years ago. Far too many to count, I think. And I was so struck by his ability to make not only me, but everyone he came into contact with feel special and extraordinarily welcome. And one of the things that I think I still have one of his books by my bedside that I pick up occasionally, just, so I have those words before I go to sleep. But not only is Collin's work just so uplifting, but there's underneath it, there's always something that is not only a surprise, but that is revelatory. So I can't see Collin on my screen.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Hi. So I'm gonna let you take it away.
Okay. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for inviting me to read with two of my favorite poets in the entire world. Carine, that was beautiful. I loved hearing the older work that I haven't gotten to hear in a long time, or never heard you read before. So that was a treat. So thank you. And always looking forward to Cecilia. And so I'm working on a new and selected collection that's going to be out next September called Wonder and Wreckage. And there's a whole section in this new and selected called Still in Hollywood. And it's all my LA poems. And because I've spent a lot of time in LA, been out to see Cecilia, did a lot of readings, Carine, Elizabeth. So I'm going to read a few poems from that section.
Right.
And the first one actually is for Cecilia as well. It even mentions Cecilia in the poem itself. And I'm pretty sure this poem is probably about 18 years old, going on 20, when Cecilia was living here in Atlanta. So it's an old one. Anyway, it's called As the Rush Comes. Cecilia says, my best words are yet to come. So I wrote these slowly, died a little in their creation. We are all slipping away. I unplug the clock, keep timetables for slow boats to China, trains that travel cross country, more simple ways to live. Everyone is eventually overtaken, our paths littered with disappointment, heartbreak, deaths of those we don't realize we love until they are gone. And this will be interspersed with joy so fast you'll need a net to catch and hold it for even a short time. Cecilia flies to both coasts, is writing her best words in high-walled white rooms I helped her find on this side of the world. She uncorks the vessel of her travels, grief, and sorrow, lets them flow on pages as I prepare to break the seal, regain time and consciousness of all the things I have put away. The clock sits untethered from its source, and still it ticks. Okay, so this one's another, well, this is sort of about Cecilia. She's not actually in this poem, but I was staying at Cecilia's apartment in LA a few years ago. And her neighbor was looking for her lost cat at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I couldn't sleep because she was up all night calling for this cat. So I wrote this poem waiting for her to stop. So it's called 1 a.m. Whitworth Avenue, Los Angeles. Boo, boo, boo kitty, boo kitty, boo kitty boo, boo boo kitty, kitty boo boo, boo. Where are you, boo? Come home, boo kitty. For an hour, she wanders Whitworth, calling the lost cat. Her voice, melodic, never angry, almost lulls me to sleep. Boo, boo kitty, boo kitty, kitty boo boo kitty boo. Distantly, there is a meow, and then the indistinct hum of the city. Pacific breeze billows the curtains, another place, not my own, where I could slink away, happily disappear with no one to call my name. So I have a lot of poems in this section that are movie related, movie connected, and this one's fairly new. And it's called What Mary Bailey Saw. And if you've seen It's a Wonderful Life, you know that Donna Reed portrayed the character of Mary Bailey and Jimmy Stewart was George Bailey. So this is called What Mary Bailey Saw. It's a Wonderful Life, 1946. A deep, old fear, usually hidden behind a benevolent face, now out in the open and running wild. Eyes darting, panicked mouth, last rope clutching at the children, then scaring them with upended dreams and tables. Here's the rage that's been building inside old mossback George since he went into the water to save his brother and got a trickier reward. Enough resentment to fill 1,001 steamer trunks that never left the station. Italy, Baghdad, Samarkand, and Bermuda became mirages in the face of marriage and bank runs. He said he never wanted to get married, ever, or have all those kids get tied down in a crummy town he'd never spent a night away from. But this Buffalo gal wasn't taking no for an answer. She made up her mind young, could see the world would swallow George up and spit him out, that he'd never find his way home. Let him think he lassoed the moon, paint it cute and hang it on the wall of the crumbling dream house, and behind it, hide the lodestone the angels hung around his neck at birth. The stars line up to talk about him, send some odd body looking for a break to pull him back from the edge. But George is Yankee stubborn, so the only way to make him understand his place is to erase him from it. Watch the town fall under the sway of an inherited mortal enemy, his father's worst nightmare come to pass, as the once bucolic streets run with all-night liquor, girls, 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 who'll jitterbug for a dime, and Mary becomes a nervous spinster, shrieking at the touch of a strange man who wears the face of her dream husband. Mary knows George would never understand that they live in a snow globe, that gets taken out and shaken once a year, that the life he's been longing to escape has a finite border. And for a moment, he clutches Tommy to his chest and Janie plunks away at the piano. He knows it too. This place where it's always Christmas Eve, where the difference between life and death is $8,000, and that it always goes missing and returns tenfold, and Zuzu's sinister flowers that bloom in the wintertime. Quick, ring a bell. So this is called, so one time when I was in LA, I missed my flight. And I had to stay in a hotel in Inglewood, not too far from the airport. And it was an old, I think it was a Days Inn. It seemed like it was a Days Inn, and maybe it wasn't. It was not a nice hotel. But I was up on the very top floor, and it was when I was out there, they were having a lot of the fires up in the hills. So I don't remember what year this was. But anyway, this is called Inglewood. We are lost in this hotel, roaming hallways, channel surfing. Sleep refuses to come, even after we have. Sex is easy. At this height, the windstorm is a moan and constant crack. The buildings of downtown shrouded in dust and smoke from fires in the hills. We sit wide awake, silently watching each other's reflection in the window, piecing together the lost 2 years. We could never love each other. You were too determined for LA life, and I could only stomach it for 4 days before the East calls me home. I'm too old for you anyway. You've got a husband who loves you in West Hollywood, and although he's recently become a stranger, we are no longer familiars. We speak different English now. The flyover states an ocean. Next morning, you'll go back to sunset fast life, waiting for the earthquake to come. I'll drive through storm debris, running late again from my flight back to my cheap apartment and dead-end job, writing poems about the wind. Okay, so we're going to jump out of that section and into the next section. This poem, it was published somewhere in some magazine many years ago, sometime after 2005, I know that. It's called At Lake Forest Plaza, which was a shopping mall in East New Orleans. At Lake Forest Plaza. The hotel is a skeleton, whitewashed ribs, its name a shadow etched into the wall like nuclear flash. Reed Boulevard is just one ground zero. I-10, a gallery of ruin. My memory is long. I came here on the run from Chris when he was alive and crazy, unwinding the double helix of us, embarrassed by his public madness. I wanted to sweat him out anonymously, heat cure for lingering malady. I could only afford the outskirts, but I had memorized the map. So Canal, Bouqueray, Carondelet, St. Charles Garden District were second tongue, steeped in Tennessee Williams, Truman Capote, and Julie Marsden in a red dress at the Olympus Ball. This is 1992, Dumplin', 1992, not the Dark Ages. I learned to acclimate, even found charm in the Lake Forest Plaza Mall, its food court a cheap haven when I could find pleasure in nothing. Chris and money burning holes in my pockets, finally going for broke. Maison Blanc, mon amour. On TV, helicopters hovered over the flooded mall, waist-deep black water, tattered roof waving white flags, and although it had been 10 years since I'd set foot there, my hand traced the places where I'd walked to shake Chris off. I should have called him then, when he was alive and not crazy. I know that now, driving past the place where the mall used to stand, swept off the earth as if some angry God's hand descended and cleared a table. This poem is from my last collection, Midnight in a Perfect World. This is called Ritual. Jesus taps me lightly on the back, pokes my neck, catches in my hair. Sometimes he slides down my cheek, threatens to put out an eye, hangs suspended on his cross over my lips. Sometimes I catch his toes with my teeth or open my mouth wide and take him whole, a sacrament, the cold metal sweet with sweat where it has lain on your chest all day. Sometimes Jesus just watches me from a distance, a tiny shadow at the center of your bare back as you sit on the edge of my bed, ready to leave. And sometimes when Jesus disappears over your shoulder as you pull on your shirt, I confess that I want you to stay. As night turns into morning, glorious to luminous, come back to bed and let's go through the mysteries of the cross once more. I'm looking for, oh, where did it go? Where did it go? I'm scrolling through. Where'd it go? Hang on. Oh, here we go. So I'm a really big fan of David Lynch and Twin Peaks in particular. And so I was really thrilled when he brought Twin Peaks back a few years ago for the miniseries. And there's a great sequence in the Twin Peaks series where David Lynch's character, he plays the head of the FBI in the series. He tells his colleagues that he's had a dream about Monica Bellucci, the famous actress. And so Monica Bellucci actually played herself in this dream sequence. And Monica Bellucci acts as a guide to David Lynch's character. And I was so taken with that scene, the sequence. It's very dark and foreboding, and it made me think of a lot of things. So I wrote this in response, and it's called Another Monica Bellucci Dream, after Twin Peaks, for all the Davids. Last night, I had another Monica Bellucci dream. I was in London writing a book. Monica called and asked me to meet her at the White Horse pub. She said she needed to talk to me. When we met at the pub, David was there, but I couldn't see his face. Monica was very pleasant. She had come alone. We both had wine. And then she said, "We're not going to talk about Paris. That moment has come and gone. It is an answer with no question." A very powerful, uneasy feeling came over me. Monica looked out the window and indicated to me that something was happening there. I turned and looked. I saw myself. I saw myself from long ago, standing with David outside Covent Garden Tube Station, the first time I ever came to London. David holds me tightly and then he kisses me, something he had never done before in public. He says we are living inside a dream, that we have become doppelgangers, tulpas. We will return to the States as different people, call each other by different names. Nothing is the same after this. I feel a pervasive melancholy, not only for things lost, but of things to come that will also be lost. I imagine my insides, intestines, and stomach cleaned out, smooth and gleaming like new pipes or the tub of a washing machine. I scrub my flesh until I am a pale version of my former self, a vestige, a cheap copy. I go to bed hungry, chewing the inside of my cheek until I taste blood. My teeth are a puzzle in my mouth. I am unrecognizable to myself. Monica is ready to leave. She kisses me on both cheeks. Then she asks a strange question. Is it future or is it past? Now, this is really something interesting to think about. And then she says, "Oh, mi caro amico, there is fire where you're going." And so I'm going to close with this. The Unrequited Arsonist, which I think is a nice follow on that poem. It's not the love itself that burns, but the hunt. From coast to coast, tire scorch and gasoline in my wake, or chemtrails for the flyover states. Watch and wonder where I'll come down hard, wheels sparking tarmac, raising alarms. I made up my mind, and yours, left nothing for the return trip. It was a yes or no question that set me off, your hemming and hawing over our future, an accelerant. This is the mystery of combustion you will solve too late. I'm already in your city, your street, your bed, with my hair of embers on your pillow. Thank you for listening.
Woohoo! That was amazing. What a great ending to all of those incredible poems. Thank you so much, Collin. It was just a delight to have you, and thank you again. This is so.
Thank you again.
Your information, where we can get your work.
It's in there. I'll put it again here in the bottom.
That's great. I always lose track. So, oh, well, thanks again. Thank you so much. I'm gonna introduce Cecilia, the last of our triumvirate of poets. Cecilia is, when I think of Cecilia, many, many, many words come to mind. But the one I'm going to share with you is simply gifted. Cecilia is not only a gifted poet, a gifted poet. She's a gifted teacher. She is a gifted friend. She's a gifted human being. And I don't know if anybody can ever ask for more than those things. I adore Cecilia, and I adore Cecilia's work. And one of my favorite things about Cecilia as a teacher is that she never tries to make your poem sound like her poem, but she finds your voice and makes your poem sound like you. So, or helps you to do that. And with that, take it away, Cecilia.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I don't know if I do that.
You don't have to know.
But I'm definitely gifted in friends. I definitely am way luckier than I deserve to be in friends. And it's a joy to be with you. Thank you, Elizabeth and Jerry. And thank you, Carine and Collin, for your poems. Carine, I love those postcard poems, those wonderful, strange little, I'll be the gentleman with the daffodils. I love just that line. I don't know why I love that. And I love the poem about your mother and the magnolia in the snow, and about your father in the swimming pool. And Collin, to hear a poem about my apartment. You're sure this woman was calling Boo Boo? The woman who drove me crazy called Buster. She could walk around the block for hours calling for her cat.
Well, she must have got a new cat, because
because Buster wasn't coming back. And once I screamed out the window, it's like, the cat hates you. It's not coming back. Shut up.
I almost did that. I was gonna be like, that cat ain't coming back.
She's like, boo, 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 boo. Oh, but I'm still kind of getting over, my hair of embers on your pillow. I'm kind of with my hair of embers on your pillow. I'm still kind of shivering from that. So I'm ready to read. I think I'll just kind of swim around in the words that have come before me. I spent the day, as I said, I think at the beginning of the Zoom, I'm in I like that Elizabeth said juju, which is how my parents told us to go to sleep when we were kids. They said go juju, but I'm in a place called Rzeszów, okay? So it's Rzeszzo with an accent W, Rzeszów. I'm about 50 miles from the Ukrainian border and probably about 50 miles from the village where my paternal grandmother was born. And I spent, people who know me know I spent half a lifetime searching for her shadow. She vanished before I was born. She seemed to have come from nowhere and disappeared into nothingness. And with the help of my friends here, I found the village where she was born and began to kind of not solve, but sort of recreate the mystery of her path through the world. And today, 24 years, I think, after the first time I went to that village, and I went back many, many times. I went back again today with my friends, Carine, Bojena, and Alan. So I'm in that kind of a frame of mind. It's a landscape that was emptied out during and after World War II. This was a landscape where there were towns. The towns were 40 and 50% of the population was Jewish. There were Roma, there were Gypsies here. There were people who had a kind of an uncategorizable identity, some of whom eventually came to identify as Ukrainians, although they had never lived in a place called Ukraine. Doesn't make a lot of sense, I know, but when you stop to think about these identities related to nation states, they often don't make a lot of sense. These people were also called Lemko, and the land was called Lemkovina. So for much of the past 20 years, I'd returned through that landscape, and it was eerily empty. The Gypsies and the Jews were removed, I guess we could say, by the Nazis. And after the war, the communists removed these people who'd lived here for generations, who were Lemko, who were sometimes identifying as Ukrainian, sometimes as Rusin, Ruthenian. It doesn't really matter. But so I'm seeing this landscape come back to life in a way that's very, it makes me happy. It also makes me really sad, because the life that's coming back really doesn't have anything to do with a life that was here before, but it's life. So I'm going to read from this manuscript. It's a newer manuscript, but it's actually a manuscript I had put together one way and decided to take apart and put together another way with some new poems. And the manuscript I'm calling In the Name of Whatever Country This Is. And I will read a handful of poems from this. Some are older poems and some are newer. And I'll begin with a poem called Return. And it's from around 2006, when I came back to visit my friends who lived in what they called a glorified shed in a small Carpathian village. And this landscape was also still very haunted. In fact, there was an old man in the village, he appears briefly in the poem, who would get confused about whether the war was still going on. Which war? Any war. So this is called Return. In the year of the poppy, year of the cornflower, year of the meadow of yarrow and buttercup, year of the thistle and ox-eyed daisy, in the spring of the year of our Lord, of the train, the engine, the ticket, the map, of the landscape of leaf shadow, willow, white birch, blurring past in the smoke of the burning fields, in the blue mist of evening, the clanging of bells, ringing out for the living, the dead, of the last great war, which is one long war, of the ancient soldier come in his uniform to stand hopefully at the door of the house of no mirrors, swept of ash, in which I was a guest of the dark bread and rain, to ask, Have the Germans already left? 60 years after the forests were flushed of the last of our enemies, last of the partisans of the Holy Republic of mud, of the blood mixed with earth, of the bones of itself, of which no one knows but the trees anymore, of which no one speaks but the child made of grass. What the priest in the village told me. It wasn't a Catholic church until the last war ended, he said, and pushed open the heavy wooden doors. Within, the iconostasis gleamed, stained glass windows on either side, and high in the rafters, a kind of chandelier made of branches or antlers, I guessed. He showed me the icon of Matka Božja, Mother of God, with the infant Christ in her lap, a bullet hole in the Christ child's knee. People had taken refuge here, he said, but the soldiers shot through the walls. These were borderlands, he explained. This was the Polish part of Austria, then the Ukrainian part of Poland, or they called it Lemkowina, and some of the people who lived here had no names for themselves but their names. Some had fled here from other places, from nowhere and everywhere. And people were poor, he said, so there were thieves and smugglers too. But people lived together, and everyone had their role. The Lemkos farmed, the Jews ran the shops, the gypsies were blacksmiths, and made the music for all the weddings and festivals. There were 800 houses once, and here he made a sweeping gesture, beyond the church, the graveyard, in the valley below the hill. But when the Nazis came, all the Jews and gypsies were sent away. Then the communists came and removed by force everyone who was left. They burned the houses, plowed over the property lines, made a state collective farm. That lasted for 40 years, he said. Then it failed, which explained the old concrete barn I'd seen, the overgrown fields, the asphalt road that ran like a ribbon through nothingness. He'd saved a few artifacts in the attic that hadn't gone up in flames. I climbed the ladder to take a look. Some documents, an axe, a sickle, a wooden wagon wheel, a woman's garment of rough white linen, the sleeves embroidered with tiny flowers. I told the priest that my father's mother had left this village as a girl, that she'd been sold to an old man here, but must have found a way to escape, that she made her way to America, that she vanished before I was born, that I could find no trace of her. And the same thing happens today, he said. The same thing happens, the same thing happens, and the same thing happens all over again. Already walking away from me then, a telephone ringing somewhere. The people of the village beginning to gather along the road in the mist and mud and emptiness, wondering who I was and what I'd come so far to know. Unabashed. I wanted to write a love poem, unabashed. I wanted, stepping into the meadow, to bend down and kiss the tips of grass. And then I wanted to take it with me, the meadow, everywhere I went. So I plucked a buttercup, a sprig of what I thought was yarrow once, and then some blue and purple flowers, and made of my plunder a small bouquet. I wanted my foot on the stones in the river where my grandmother's foot had stepped, then to lie on my back in the sun and let the butterflies swarm my hair. I wanted to piss in the dirt and did, crouching behind a willow next to the river in waist-deep green, to put my body into the body of that earth as fluid gold. And then I wanted the storm that came with its blue-black wind and sheets of rain to tear me back into the sky. This is for Stephen Siegel, what the young historian told me. She's with you, he said, and meant by this I could speak to the trees, the stones. I could ask to open the book of grass, look inside of it, see for myself. Here was the girl who was called Maria. Here also my restlessness. You just have to find your way of divination, the young historian said. My grandmother's spirit there in the half-burnt branch, the field where a house once stood, the river beside it that ran with blood. And with my father's hands, I could turn the pages of wind, lift his grief from him. Here's where his mother disappeared when the border shifted between worlds. The young historian told me that tracking an absence is possible too. He said that people who lived in these places changed allegiances all the time, that you could be standing where you'd always stood and find yourself standing on the wrong side, that his grandfather died a broken man, that borders are shifting even now. Earth we've given beloved bodies to, dirt we wash ourselves with, brush away. But she's with you, he said, and meant by this, I think, to comfort me, as a father might comfort a child, as a child might comfort her father in turn. The grass in her hands, the voice of a woman who speaks as the trees speak, saying, go on. It's been especially meaningful, I guess I could say, to be here, so near to Ukraine, where there's a war going on in what Vladimir Putin calls a fictional country. These borderlands where identity was always fluid, political allegiances were always shifting. In my grandmother's village, some people took the side of Ukrainian partisans. That was the reason given for the forced removals. But my grandmother and some other people had been communists. And so this is really a poem addressed to her and addressed to, I suppose, the people of that village who stood on whatever side they could stand. It's called The Wars, between the borders that were not there. You had to know how bad the Nazis were to have loved the communists. In 1946, in that nightmare time on Earth, in that place between the wars, between the borders that were not there, you couldn't know who would be more brutal. You had to take your chances, guess. If someone came knocking in the night, it could be your neighbor, your enemy. It could be a soldier come for your daughter or for your wife or only for bread. Now, who could betray you? Who would betray you? On which side should you stand? There was no safe place to stand. Some stood in lines and froze to death. Some marched to where they were told to march. Some set their houses and fields on fire, then fled to the forest and buried themselves. Many disappeared in this way. The earth a shallow grave, the earth turned over, leaking bones. So who were the martyrs? Who were the killers? Who was a partisan, your kind? If you had to choose between blood and water, there was no human way to choose. So what had been wasted? What had been ruined? When it was over, what had you saved? And if you were far from the burning fields in a country that made you a criminal, what made you more or less alive than the dead of the country you'd left behind? So you took the cash that was handed to you. You changed your name. You changed your clothes. What I mean to say is that I forgive you, whatever deal with the devil you made. I have never gone hungry except from spite. I have never lifted a dead child in my arms. I have never had to kill a thing I loved to not be killed. Listen, I don't know who you were, but there was a world and you stood in it once. Then you fell through the door of yourself. This is going to be my last poem. It's called A Place in the Music. Once in a dream that wasn't a dream, I saw them walking away from me, or not away, but just ahead. All my dead beloveds in a shimmer of silvery wind. They knew I was following and kept on, arms linked, walking side by side on a road between fields of waist-high grass, wind tossing their hair and the hems of the flowered dresses the women wore. Some uncle or other, still a boy, running after the rest. Was that joy? And what it said to me, this picture in my mind, was to not be afraid, that it's only a kind of magic, death. And the story is rich. The story goes on. I was behind them, watching them walk into the wind, when I heard the hum beginning inside me, a place in the music, high and sweet, as if they were singing or also heard the song I'd begun to hear and were glad and loved me still, the sky that silver too, although none of them turned around. Thank you. Everybody's muted.
Beautiful.
Let's all unmute and reveal ourselves and give these three wonderful poets applause. And Zoom applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cecilia,
Mm-hmm.
could you come over and read the dictionary for me, please?
Gladly. I love reading out loud to people. I think it's my favorite thing about being a teacher is that you get to read out loud to people. But thank you.
So good. I'm unfortunately, I've lost my Zoom screen and can't find it anywhere.
Oh, where could it be?
I don't know. It's just the phone rang and my computer freaked out and it's just gone. So
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
yes, a thing came up and said unmute. So I did, but I can't, forgive me. And I was in the middle of sending Cecilia a direct message, but I can't get my way back to the chat. So
Elizabeth, I'm thinking about the video where the lawyer's in Zoom court and he's got a cat filter on.
yes. And he's like, I am not a cat.
Judge, I'm not a cat.
Oh, here, let's, I just had a, nope.
There
you
you
are.
There you
No,
are.
I do not see anything. I see, ad
Well, don't pick your nose, honey, because we see you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just going to pop into the nothingness because God knows I've done that before.
I'm just gonna pop into the nothingness.
That was so amazing and too short as always, but I know most of those poems and I was still weeping. So thank you I always need a good cry. Does anyone have any questions? And I can't really do anything because I can't see anybody. So
If you have a question, just shout it out. It'll be anarchy.
I'm going to
gotcha.
stay silent and stay with the words that all of you have given tonight and say thank you and bonne nuit from Paris.
Bonne nuit. Sleep, bonne rêve, belle rêve.
Thank you for the words. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Mark.
for being
Thanks
here.
for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cecilia.
Everybody.
Thank you. Get that said. So good to see you. It's been so long. Yeah.
Wonderful to see you. I'm still in awe
Oh.
after your reading. And I'm so bad with computers, so it was a miracle that I got through today. I'm so grateful for it.
There
Thank
you
you,
are.
Carine.
It's been a day of miracles. It's
Yeah.
really been a day of miracles. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great to have you here, Geta.
wonderful.
Good to see you.
So it's my day today, which made all the days.
Wow.
Is it your birthday?
No, just
No.
hearing you.
Mm.
Seeing you, hearing you.
A lot of days.
Thank you. And hi, Jerry.
Hi, Geta. I
Hi,
can see you now.
Elizabeth. Hi, honey.
I can see you now that it came.
I can see.
Still around.
It's a miracle.
A very small miracle because I suffer from dry eyes because of my medication. And when Cecilia was reading, my left eye started to cry.
But the right one was fine.
I'm walking.
Left
Florence
nose,
is crying with her left eye. I mean, I told you it's just a day of miracles.
Is that half a tear?
Yeah. Elizabeth's popping into the nothingness. So, how's your nose, Carine? Honey, how's your
Well,
nose?
I'm sounding kind of like nasal, but
No,
I'm
you
making
sound like
every
Lauren
effort.
Bacall. Yeah.
I'm making every effort to stay
You
upright.
sound like Lauren Bacall with a little bit of hay fever.
Ooh, thank you. Thank you so much. I can't whistle though.
Very good. So what are you doing with those postcards, Carine? Are they in a manuscript or?
They're in Bed of Want.
Okay.
Wrote them a long time
Gosh.
ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I'd forgotten. I remember that you had postcards in that book, but I just didn't
Yeah.
remember the gentleman with the daffodils, which I just keep.
Yeah, yeah. They're not my favorite flower, but it just came up.
Oh, I love daffodils.
It just
I
kind
love
of
daffodils, yeah.
rose, but yeah, they're old, but I thought I should read some of the older things. The children were getting a little noisy, and I thought, all right, I'll pay attention because, it's usually one doesn't go back to the older pieces. So I thought, let me see what they sound like and let me see who I was back then writing them. And it was kind of fun for the first time to hear them again after so many years. So I might give an answer to some of the postcards now.
Oh, that would be very cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I loved hearing the Pleasure Hotel. It was such to hear the words. I'd read it, but to hear it spoken was really a wonderful treat.
Thank you, Polly. Thank you. I chose, it was from an assignment that I gave students years ago. I chose 8 words, I think it was 6 or 8 words, and I just had them repeat the words. These were my words. Each student got their own words, and I just kept repeating it. And it kind of was an incantation and just took over itself. So it was a fun process. And it's fun to read. But thank you, Polly.
Thank you. Really fun to listen to.
Thanks.
Hey, Cecilia, how you doing? It's Peter.
Hey, Peter. I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm sorry I couldn't make the earlier Carine and Collin. But I do want to tell you, friend, I want to say, I want to co-sign what Elizabeth said to you and about you as an editor. You know how to listen to what a poet is trying to do and ask the right questions so that we find what we're trying to do and you don't try to, as Elizabeth said, try to impose onto a poet what their Cecilia poem is, which I think is, well, and it's a lot of discipline on your part, because even though you have this marvelous weight as a teacher, you use it very judiciously, so that nobody feels like intimidated, and they do feel like they want to go into the sort of skies of their own voices. So I just want to first say that to you.
Thank you.
And also, you know, I love all the years we've known each other and all the years I've listened to so much of your reading. What I think what's coming to me today to say is, when you deal with these absolutely like tragic, you know, themes, you never, whatever your well, sorry, I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to say, when you deal with these tragic themes, you still allow us to embrace the deep, deep humanity of the circumstances, and you keep us, as the old, as your mom C might say, when you keep our eyes on the prize, which is we're all human beings, and often we're caught in forces that we actually don't have any control over, except in the way we treat ourselves or we treat each other. And even when we mess up, or quote unquote, if we look back and see we've messed up, quote unquote, it's only because we really, you know, like you just said, I don't want to try to overdo it, but I just want to tell you that's a true gift for me, because, you know, I'm really wanting to make sure, especially as I mature, what do I need to say and how do I need to say it as in such a way that it really connects people, even if I'm righteously pissed or if I'm righteously agonized over the theme. And that's what you got. To me, there are people who write poetry, and then there are poets. And you're a poet to me, because you take me into what language
Takes one to know one.
Well, I'll go for that. I'll take it, but you can be praised today from this angle. So just for me, I'm sorry, Carine and my man Collin, I didn't get a chance to really hear y'all today, but you know, I definitely needed what I heard from you, Cecilia. And
thank you, Peter.
I got to go
really
in a minute, but I
appreciate it.
just wanted to make sure I put that on the record.